Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, the creator and host of the award-winning podcast that you're listening to right now. Thank you so much, called Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. It is a daily podcast, 365 days a year, and each day we talk to an author about all of the things related to their career, their book, their life, and more in 30 minutes or less, because who has time? I am now an author myself, although I wasn't when I started this podcast, and you can get my new memoir, Bookends, a memoir of love, loss, and literature, wherever books are sold starting July 1st, and my children's book, Princess Charming. You can learn more about me at zibbyowens.com, but really you're here to learn more about the authors, and that is what we're going to do. Also, be sure to check out all the other podcasts in the Zcast Podcast Network. You can learn more at zcastnetwork.com and definitely check out those shows as well. I hope you'll all check out the all-new Zibby Mag, ZIBBY-MAG, the literary lifestyle destination with essays, book news, a lit lifestyle feature, and even some classes. Check it out, zibbymag.com. Jennifer Close is the author of Marrying the Ketchups, a novel. Jennifer is the best-selling author of Girls in White Dresses, The Smart One, and The Hopefuls. Born and raised on the North Shore of Chicago, she is a graduate of Boston College and received her MFA in fiction writing from the New School in 2005. She now lives in Washington, D.C. and teaches creative writing at Catapult. Welcome, Jennifer. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss Marrying the Ketchups, a novel.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I have to say, I watched the video of you teaching people how to actually marry the ketchups.
Do you know what it was?
I had no idea what it was. And my daughter and I watched. She had no idea what it was. Now I'm slightly kind of not horrified, but the idea. So maybe you should explain to people. So this is a novel, but Jennifer did a video, which you can all go watch on YouTube, explaining what this is. So why don't you just explain it?
Sure. So it is funny because I waitressed in college and I had no idea what it was. So at the end of the night, the servers take all of the condiments and they take the ketchups and the half empty, kind of dirty ketchups, and they combine them to make it look brand new. And I just remember the first time I saw them do that, it blew my mind. I was like, oh, I guess I wasn't getting a brand new bottle of ketchup every time I sat down somewhere. And it is gross. It is a little disturbing, but I don't know. It's just one of those things that when you eat at a restaurant, you never think about. And then when you're there working, it's like, oh yeah, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. So that's where the title came from. I originally did not want this to be the title. It was the title of the first section. And my editor kept asking, can we call the book this? Can we call the book this? And finally I just said, sure. But I'm so happy because it does seem like the right title for it.
Well, what did you want it to be called?
It's a horrible title. You don't even have to pretend.
I want to know.
I wanted to call it Wait.
Like WAIT?
Just wait. Yep. Because I was thinking it's about a restaurant and these people have been waiting for the Cubs to win the World Series and waiting for so many things in their life. And I just thought it was simple and very clever. And everyone around me kept being like, ooh, I don't think so. So finally I gave in. Yeah.
Or even waiters.
Waiters. Yeah. Oh, that would be good too. Probably a little more. See, you should have been on the meeting. We could have.
That applies to everything. People who wait, who are waiting for something, but also, anyway, that's funny. Well, maybe go back and tell everybody about the premise of this book and where you came up with this idea, how you came up with this idea. And then I really also want to know, how you became an author originally. I know you're already a best-selling author before this book, but I want to hear about your whole journey. So start with this book, what this book is
okay. About. Perfect. So this book, I have known for a long time. I wanted to write a book set in a restaurant. That was just that was the original idea. There wasn't really anything specific with it. Since I worked in a restaurant, I just think there's so much potential for gossip and tension. And I loved serving. I loved, I was young and we were all around the same age. It was just really fun.
Wait, what restaurant did you work in and where?
Oh, it's called Hackney's on Harms, and it's outside of Chicago in the north suburbs. And they have a huge patio. So in the summer, they hire 50 additional servers. Wow. And so it's all kids in college and around high school, so it was really fun. We had quite a good time. And I have a lot of good friends that I've met, from that restaurant. But so that was the idea. And then it sort of started to gel. I think I was kind of jotting down ideas when I was finishing The Hopefuls, and I knew I wanted it to be in Chicago. I kind of knew the family. And then when the Cubs won the World Series, so the book is about, a restaurant family, the Sullivans. Their restaurant is called Sullivan's. It's very original. And it's outside Chicago in Oak Park, Illinois, which is not the suburbs where I grew up, but I have a good friend who lives there now. And it takes place in 2017, right after the Cubs have won the World Series. The patriarch of the family dies, and then Trump is elected. And so they're just kind of like, what happened in those 2 weeks? And they're sort of just reeling from it. And it was funny. I didn't plan to write about any of those things. In the original book, the patriarch actually was alive the whole time. But when the Cubs won the World Series, I thought, I do want to put that in. That's so fun. I just have this feeling this family would be huge Cubs fans. I'm a huge Cubs fan. And I just thought it was like a fun Chicago thing, but I couldn't put that in without talking about the election. And then it really did take over a little bit more than I meant it to. It kind of crept its way in. So it's just about them sort of dealing with these 2 weeks that they feel like sort of just changed everything. And yeah, that's the premise.
Were all your other books, were they all published by Knopf?
Mm-hmm. I've had the same editor and publisher the whole time. So that I feel very lucky about because we get along quite well. Yeah.
Is Jenny Jackson your editor or somebody else?
Mm-hmm.
She
Jenny,
is, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's
yes.
it. Wait, so go back to you getting your start professionally. And
sure. So
grew up in Chicago, then what happened?
Yeah. So I went to, I mean, I'm sure you know this too, because I feel like you can always tell when people want to be writers because they're huge readers. And it's sort of, I'm sure you felt the same way. It's like you have this love for it and you want to do it, but you don't always know how to do it.
Yes.
I took a bunch of writing classes in college, but there was one that I took with Steve Almond, who just actually published a book this summer as well. And I mean, he's published a ton of books, but he just published a novel. He was great because it was a fiction class and he was really good at giving practical advice for how to be a writer, which I had never, no one had ever told me those things before. So he kind of laid it out. He talked about the pros and cons of grad school, jobs you could have that were writing adjacent. And I think that was when I really started to think, I want to do this and I'm going to figure out how to do it. So I ended up going to grad school a couple of years later in New York in the new school at the new school, which I loved. I met my best writing friend who this book is dedicated to because we exchange writing and emails all day long. And it was great for me. But I, right after grad school, was kind of stopped writing a little bit. I was working at Condé Nast, and one, I liked that job. And two, I think I was a little shell-shocked from grad school. Like I had learned so much and then I was kind of frozen. But while I was working at Condé Nast portfolio, which is short-lived, but it plays into the story. Do you? Yeah. I started writing my first book, Girls in White Dresses, and I would write it. At that point, my job, I kind of had to wait to sign off on things that came back from fact checking and production. So there was always like a time in the afternoon, evening when people had left, but I was still there and my work was done. And I finally started writing again. And it was like it was probably like an hour or two each night that I was writing in my office. And all of a sudden, and for a while, I just told myself, this is just fun. I'm just practicing. I'm just getting back into it. And then there was a point when I was like, oh, this is a book and I can't lie to myself anymore. And so it was probably 3/4 of the way done and portfolio folded. And we had to be out of the office. And they gave us 2 days, but I was so panicked because all I could think was, my book is on that computer, which is not mine, but you start to think it is yours. So we had some severance because they had laid everyone off. And that was when I was really scared and finished my first book and got an agent. And I think I was motivated by so much fear because I just sort of thought, this is it. It's now or never. And so that was how I finished my first book. And I've probably never been as productive again in my life.
Wow. And then you just sold it to Knopf. I mean, that's amazing. And by the way, I've been a huge reader my whole life too. And as you probably know, but until I got into the publishing industry more, I didn't know exactly the reputations of all the different publishers and the imprints and the different publishers.
I don't think anyone that's out of it does it.
Right,
I think it's only.
Yeah, I never thought to look at who published the book. It was only about the book and the author and the story and whatever. But now that I am much more acquainted with all the different publishers, like for me, like Knopf is like the gold medal of the literary novel, right? This like beacon of beautiful writing and just like amazing literary work, honestly. So were you over the moon? Like, tell me about, like, was that always the type of writing you wanted to do in that sort of genre, bucket, if you will? And was that the publisher you were after? Like, how has that affected your writing ongoing, or is it just like a perfect marrying of genre? Do you not even know what I'm asking?
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're asking. That's a good question. I mean, I think I would have been thrilled with so many. I was so thrilled. I mean, it's such like a storied place. Like you walk into that building, and if you love books, there's no way that I probably, even if you don't love books, you just feel like, oh, there's so much that's happened here. So many people that have come before. So I was very, very over the moon, especially because my writing, especially Girls in White Dresses, I think it could be marketed certain way. I think that there's different ways, and I always felt like I loved being there. I love the way that their books look, which I know, but yeah, it is such a funny thing. Don't you sometimes think before, because I think back to before I paid attention to all of that, or before I even knew all of that, and it seems so innocent that you just went into a bookstore and had no idea what was out, or, now I'm sure months in advance, and the reputations of the publishers and the editors and all of that. But yeah, I was just, I was very, very, I was just thrilled. I mean, yeah. And my editor is my age. I think you've met her. And she had published Courtney Sullivan, who I know who I adore, and has become a really good writing friend of mine, just because she had like gone before me. So she still is giving me tips. But so it was like, I just felt like it was such a good fit all around. And and it has been.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. And it's funny because it does, when I tell this story now, and that was however many years ago, 11 or 12 years ago, it seems like it all happened really easily, but it didn't feel that easy at the time. And I do know now, like looking at friends and colleagues, that it does much more often take longer. It just is funny when you're in the middle of it, it doesn't feel like it. It still feels like this is taking forever. I'm never going to do this. So just throw that out there. Yeah.
I completely relate to that.
Yeah.
Completely relate. And then, so tell me, give like a brief synopsis for everybody about your other books, if you don't mind.
Girls in White Dresses is, I believe on the cover, it says a novel and stories. So it's connected short stories, which I love. I was very inspired by The Girl's Guide to Hunting and Fishing. Did you ever read that one?
Melissa Banks?
That one. Yeah. And it's about a group of friends in their 20s in New York, just sort of dealing with everything that happens with that age. Another title I did not mean to keep, but that's what it was called for so long. And then it just came with it. And then the smart one is a family story. It's about 3 adult children who move home the same year, all for different reasons, and just how they're dealing with that. There's a wedding that's been called off. There's a secret. There's a lot happening. The Hopefuls is set in DC, which is where I live now. And it's about 2 young couples that become friends. Both of the husbands have aspirations to run for office. And I think with that one, DC is a very interesting place. But I think I was trying to figure out why anyone would want to run for office, and sort of what it is that calls people to run, like what the appeal is. I think I was trying to figure that out and just write through some of the personalities that I had seen. So, and then Marrying the Ketchups. So that's the 4th one.
Wow. Why do you live in DC?
Because my husband works in politics.
Oh, okay.
He's at the State Department. Yeah. And so we moved here. He worked for the Obama administration. So we were here for about 9 years, and then we left for a few years, and then we're back. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's a lot of moving. Amazing. Well, how you write a lot about families and family dynamics, and even here with Gretchen, and why, what is it that intrigues you the most about the interior lives of family members and all the inner dramas of people? Like, why do you think you're called to that?
I've thought about this a lot, because it's funny when the more that you write and you think like, oh, I'm drawn to the same topics, but you're not, you're not thinking about it when you're doing that. I think family interests me because you can't, and I mean this in a nice way, get away from them. It's like they know you often. I mean, the families I write about, I think, are mostly, trying the best they can to love each other, right? Like everyone has faults, but there's no big breaks in the families I've written about. They're all sort of like imperfectly trying to support each other. And I just think it's interesting. I have two older brothers, and I mean, we don't we don't fight anymore. I was just telling someone this story, but there is something super interesting about if I did ever fight with them, they're the only people I never would apologize to. We would just pick, because it's sort of like, you don't have to, like, we already,
Yeah.
and I just think it's interesting. I think the way that families define you, I mean, the smart one was a lot about when you're in a family and you're told, whether it's out loud or just sort of because of the way you're treated, that you are a certain way. If you're the smart one, if you're, if you're outgoing, if you're quiet, sort of what that does to you. I've just always been really interested in it. Yeah.
It is. I love reading about families, probably for the
I
same
do too.
reading,
Yeah.
it's like endlessly. I don't need to try. I mean, I like reading all different types of things, but all those inner workings, because obviously we all have a family of some kind, right?
Yeah,
That's
and
the
I
other
think
thing you have in common. It's like,
yeah.
Everybody has that, they're all different shapes and sizes, but it always sort of makes you reflect on your own. And also growing up, I mean, I just interviewed this guy yesterday. He's like, I thought it was normal growing up that, I basically never saw my parents and I lost touch with them. Like, you lost touch with like, how do you lose touch with your parents? I can't even go down the street. My mother's like, I was just out for a walk. I just happened to be by your house. And I was like, Mom. Anyway.
But that's the other thing, is like, you think everything is what is around you is normal. And then whatever, like, that's your framework for going out into the world. It's fascinating. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It's wild. What are you working on now?
I'm just starting to work on a new book that takes place at I hesitate to even call it a book, a country club. And this one is a little bit more, there's like a big inciting incident that happens at the very beginning of it. So I don't know if you can tell from my books. My books tend to be, the characters always come to me, and then it's sort of, I could meander with them for years in a book before I'm like, oh, is this what we should write about? So I'm trying to be a little bit more intentional about this one, that there is this big event that starts it off. And so far it's fun. I think it's an interesting thing to sort of explore, as, again, everything that's happening around us, like, to choose to be a part of a place. I'm trying to say this carefully, because it's not, I don't mean to say it in such a judgmental way, because part of why I wanted to write about this is because I know and love people who still, we grew up in these places and they are still there. A place that is so not aligned with your own beliefs anymore, but it holds a special place in your heart because you kind of grew up there. So that's sort of in the background of all of it. That's not really what happens. There's a lot of funny stuff that happens in the book.
That's awesome. I'm feeling like almost like a Dirty Dancing vibe-ish or something.
Oh my God, I wish. That's amazing. I hope. I mean, I do, because there are like families that come together. Yes. Oh, I'm going to use that as a comp, because who wouldn't pick that up?
You can use
where there's like a lot of history with the families and then the children. Yeah.
Alyssa Friedland has a book, Last Summer at the Golden Hotel. Have you read that?
No, but I'm writing it down because
it's similar to like a Dirty Dancing theme with like families in the Catskills. They have a storied old hotel, and it's going out of business. And what are the grandkids? What do all the different people have to do to save the thing? And but it's the same sort of vibe-ish. Yeah. Anyway, check it out.
I will. Thank you.
Not to recommend someone else's book. I'm here to recommend.
No, it's amazing. That's what I'm here for. Isn't that the best part of like being in the writing world? And like, we get to talk about books all the time. People recommend books. You get them early. It's amazing.
I know. This one came out like last summer, I think. But I do love that part about the writing world. Yeah. And it is funny. I feel like maybe I should write an article about this now that we're talking about it. Like what it used to be to go into a bookstore and what it is now.
Yeah.
And is it better or worse?
I know. And I don't know, because I do have like memories of just stumbling upon books, and again, now it's like, a year in advance, probably more, that a book by an author you love is coming out. And I do feel like there was just more. It was like, oh, this is out. It's so pretty. I'll buy it. It's like, this looks amazing. I know it is very different.
Also Instagram too. And I guess all of social media, but I'm much more of an Instagram person, but like, you watch them finishing the sentences on the book. Yeah. Right. Just here's my last page. Like, and I'm like, oh, great. And then, so you're along for the ride in a different way. But no, there's so much about the industry. Like, I didn't know that books came out on Tuesdays. Why would I know or care about
I
that?
know. I didn't know that until honestly right before my book came out. And I was like, what? That's weird. That's a weird rule.
Right?
It's
I keep trying to break it. I started this publishing company. I'm like, I don't want my books to come out on Tuesdays. Like, why? Why can't I just pick my date? So anyway, although my book came out on July 1st. So I guess some people can change it up, but if you're Amazon or whatever. Anyway. Okay. Advice to aspiring authors.
Oh, I have so much. I think my main advice is just knowing, just like reminding yourself that, well, one, this is my most important thing, because I think this is what stopped me from writing for so long. You have this idea in your head and it's amazing. And then when you try to write it down, it's awful. And just knowing that's just like a very normal part of the process. And you just have to get it down and figure it out later. And then also just knowing that no one is perfect at this. And I was about to say no one is good at this right away, but like you still have to practice and learn. I think people sometimes think writing is different than other jobs or other things where it's like you just are born knowing how to do this. And that's not true. Like you get so much better the more that you read, the more that you try. And I do think people, and by people, I mean, I'm sure I have said this too, like you get so frustrated because you think like, I want to do this and it's not, it's not great, but you can always make your draft better. You can always make your next book better. Like it just is, it's a skill. Ann Patchett has this great essay about it where she talks about like, why is it any different than playing an instrument? You have to put in the hours. And I just really love reminding people of that because I think we forget. And so, writing something that's not perfect is great because it means you're practicing and just knowing you can make it better. Because my first drafts I call them garbage drafts because I think people would be like, what is this? Like, I don't know. I'll figure it out in the next 5 drafts. Yeah.
It is funny. I'm like, what other profession? I mean, I guess you said music or whatever, but do you have to just like do so much? Because it takes so long, and then have to throw it all out just to get to where it's like the most bizarre. I don't know. Maybe like finding a recipe. Maybe a chef coming up with the perfect recipe who has to make batch after batch after batch or something.
I know. It's funny too when you think about all the words that are thrown out, and it's like you just have to be like, that never happened. I'm not even thinking about it. And the lie that you tell yourself with each new thing you start is like, this time it's going to be different, right? Like this time I've learned a lot. So I won't throw out 500 pages of the character's childhood. That's never going to make it in the book.
It would be funny, like if there literally was like the land of discarded draft, you know what I mean? Like where like all these stories go that never come out anywhere else,
I know.
Like what would that world look like? Anyway, whatever. I'm going off per usual. Are you reading anything good? And if so, what?
I am. I just started Lessons in Chemistry, which I'm really liking.
Yep.
And then one of my friends, Megan Angelo, who I think you've interviewed too, she wrote Followers, but she has a new, it's like a Word document I'm looking at on my computer right now. And that's my plan for this weekend because so I'm so excited. I started it earlier this week and then I'm teaching as well. So I wasn't able to get to it and I'm very excited to get to it. So
I interviewed her right before the pandemic. I feel like that was one of my last.
I think you did. Yeah. She came into the city.
One of my last in-person things before the world changed. But anyway, that's exciting.
What are you reading? Yeah.
Book. I don't know. Marrying the Ketchups. I don't even know. What am I going to read for next week? I'm just trying to get through today. What am I reading next week? I'm like looking over. I don't know. What am I reading?
At your piles of books. I know.
I know. I only read based on my calendar now. I do this. It's like how I choose. I'll tell you what I'm going to be reading because I'm going to see who I'm interviewing on Monday. I am going to be reading. Hold on. I'm in April on my calendar. So that's not helping us. Let's see. I am going to be reading Kylie Letty's book, which it's called The Perfect Other. Kylie Letty, Perfect Other. The Perfect Other. So I better get to that because obviously I haven't started. So that's what I'll be doing later today. But I don't know. I'm so lucky to read such great stuff all the time. Like books like yours.
Thank you.
Well, it was nice to meet you. And
it was so nice to meet you. I've heard so many wonderful things about you and I love this podcast. And yeah, congratulations again on your book. That's very exciting.
I did an event, by the way, last night at Planet Word. Have you been there? It's in Washington, D.C. You have to go.
No. Wait, where is it?
It opened probably 2 years ago or something. And it's all about the written word. It's all about language.
Ooh.
Yeah. Go check it out. All right. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.